Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay. Welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha First Pass, First Impressions coverage. The Holy Paladin. And of course, as this is the last spec I have done during sort of a class junket, there's going to be the follow-up video coming up after this. That's going to be the B-roll footage from the dungeon, but it's not having any comms. So if you want the communication from myself and those that I ran the dungeon with, then you can, of course, check the description box down below for those links for the overall testing VOD that was done today. If you want all of the back-end stuff on what we go through, and of course, for any other spec, check out the channel guide, also linked down below, which is going to have everything for this expansion, what's left, the schedule coming up, all the VODs, all the dungeon runs, all the videos, all the wrap-up videos, and if you want to go back to Legion stuff or to BFA stuff, if you want to go back to those expansions, those are all linked there as well. So check those links down below. Also, additionally, you'll also find there's a link down there for my merch. I am strategically, of course, wearing my little pupper Greymane with Manduin from the BFA cinematic, the little wolf, because we're healing today, of course. But there's a whole bunch of other designs that are down there as well. If you want to go with the Battle Azerite Day shirt, we might make something for the next expansion as well, with or without text, out of that Gorillas Demon Days theme. You can do it with or without text. You can put it on Horde colors if you like. I don't know. You choose. Everything is customizable, different styles, shapes, colors, whatever, fabrics. Link down below on my Design by Human store if you want to support what I do and keep me doing what it is that I'm doing on the internet. Holy Paladin, though. Another Paladin. I think overall I've had the most, I guess, positive feelings on the Paladin class overall, and I'll go into more of those, of course, in the overall wrap-up video. But Holy Paladin also has quite a bit of change because of Holy Power is back. And the aura changes, and, you know, DPS versus healing versus both versus you're a damage dealing melee healer. That thing is all wrapped together here. And let's go through all the different baseline adjustments. So, returning spells, of course. Blessing of Sacrifice is back for Retribution. You, of course, still have it. Prot has it, but at least Ret has this back. It works at like the 22.5% of the damage done, damage to the target. You Blessing of Sacrifice, you take. Of course, as Holy, you can combine it when you sacrifice. You can, of course, put up Divine Protection, which has a exceedingly short cooldown, of course, if you talent things like Unbreakable Spirit. So you can sacrifice without, you know, hurting yourself too bad. Things like that still work. And Hammer of Wrath is baseline. We can go over your baseline abilities right here. Hammer of Wrath for Holy is the locked 7.5 second cooldown. Same thing with Protection. Generates 1 holy power. Does pretty hefty damage. Only usable on targets less than 20% health. Or once you get rank 2, you can always use it whenever you pop Avenging Wrath. So you can spam your Hammers of Wrath. You get 3 of them if you cast it sort of on cooldown. And you'll be able to get 3 extra holy power and do additional damage, as you would expect from that whole situation. That is how Hammer of Wrath will work here. Your auras have come back and changed. You've got Ret Aura. Ret Aura rank 2 gives more duration when it procs. Sense Undead is coming back for the flavor. Also got your Turn Evil coming back. Turn Evil currently does not work on metamorphosed demon form demon hunters, but it will work on Lichborn undead death knights if they don't put up AMS before they cast it. Concentration aura comes back, which is the interrupt and silence effect, having 30% shorter impact on those that are, of course, in your concentration aura. And then Devo aura is now just a flat 3% all damage reduction, not the weird 10% and then like the scaling down per person kind of thing. And they also got Crusader aura, which does have a bit of a animation now. I was told it does not have an animation before, but the heart of the Crusader is gone. So to get your additional movement speed, you have to swap over. And yes, all auras are on the global. You do have to swap over to Crusader aura to do this. But then as the Holy Paladin, of course, you have Aura Mastery. So I'm going to just go through these one after another because these are obviously a pretty big deal for the overall auras, because Prot and Ret just kind of put the aura up and that's it. But with Aura Mastery, for a 3-minute cooldown for 8 seconds, you will of course empower your current aura. Now, I cannot toggle to Concentration Aura to see how that actually will work, but also not all of these are even hooked up yet. So we'll look back on Concentration Aura when we get there. I'm going to imagine, and if someone can correct me in the comments, if you can look in the database and find it, we couldn't dig through it today. It's supposed to make you immune to silence and interrupt effects for 8 seconds if you're in the aura, which could be huge, like real huge for PvP and things of that nature. Obviously, 3-minute cooldown. Other things, of course, Crusader Aura goes to 60% movement speed from 20. If you have Devo, this goes to 15% damage reduction, up from 3. So you add 12% more to it, and of course hits everyone for it. So a little bit weaker than the current iteration right now on live. It's 20%, but again, it's way weaker all the time outside of this. So it's stronger outside of it, but weaker in Aura Mastery. It's a little bit trade-off there. And when you're in Retribution Aura, what this does now is that all Paladins can benefit from the Retribution effect. If you have Ret Aura up and someone, an ally within your party or raid, dies within 40 yards, you'll gain Avenging Wrath for 8 seconds or, of course, 12 seconds. But what this also does for Holy Paladin is it increases the duration of Avenging Wrath by 50%. We tried different variations of this today, couldn't find out what hooked up together, because you can have Sanctified Wrath, which adds 5 more seconds to the baseline Avenging Wrath, right? So that is, how does this stack? Because you go from 20 seconds to 25 seconds. Do you add 50% from the 25? Do you add 50% from the 20, giving you 10 more seconds, going to 30, and then do you get 25% from that? Or are they each individual and just gives you 35 seconds of wings, which is still insane, but it does require you to use a 3-minute cooldown to buff a 2-minute cooldown, but 35 seconds of wings would be really big, potentially, for either just doing damage, of course, or doing a whole bunch of healing. Also, how does it work with Avenging Crusader? Because this replaces Avenging Wrath. Again, none of this is hooked up yet. It doesn't even work at all. Does this give you 30 seconds of Avenging Crusader, where you're just going in there and blasting with your auto attacks, your Crusader strikes, your judgments, and dealing that huge ricochet damage? Of course, that syncs up really crazily with Beacon of Virtue windows, and that's still going to be a thing, but we don't know how this is going to impact it because they just slapped it in here and put the new auras in, and it's not all hooked up yet. So we'll look at that in the future. We'll see that on the stream sometime in the future, or of course we'll cover it hopefully when beta rolls around, when we can actually touch that, like in August, September timeframe. So we'll see. Other baseline stuff here, I wanted a side note, is that Ret Aura, there was some curiosities about Ret Aura and Aura Mastery impacting other Paladins. It does not. So far that we can tell, you can't have a Holy Paladin pop Aura Mastery, Ret Aura, and then your Prot Paladins or Ret Paladins pop their wings. Does not affect them. As you see, when you have Ret Aura up, there actually is no aura in place. It's a hidden aura that's basically scanning for deaths in your party or raid. That's more or less how the whole thing works. It doesn't have a, you know, when you have Devo Aura up, you see the aura as a buff, right? When you have Crusader Aura up, you see the aura as a buff. That's not how that works specifically. And then that's all the Aura Mastery changes. There's some baseline things here. Consecration. You have the same version of Consecration that Protection does on live right now, but it's been switched due to the damage and healing sort of style. And again, Holy Paladin basically just shifting their damage away from only damage that Ret has and doing more healing, whereas Ret obviously is all their healing shifts to damage. Consecration now is the same that Retribution has. It's 12 seconds of a cooldown, and then it's 12-second duration, and the cooldown is reduced by haste. It does pretty heavy holy damage over the 12 seconds. So, of course, combining it with dropping it during wings, dropping it during Sanctified Wrath, extra damage there. Has no damage fall off or cap at all. So it'll always do its damage per target. It ticks once on cast, and then it ticks once a second for 12 seconds. Every 10% haste you have, however, will add one more tick to it. It's essentially a break point. So I did, for example, I did a test when I playing Ret the other day. I saw 16 ticks, one on cast, plus 12 to 13, and then I had 33% haste when I popped 2 haste buffs, Inquisition and Seraphim, and saw 16 total ticks. So it kind of works like Fel Barrage for Havoc, where it fits in more procs in the time frame, but it doesn't make the duration, and there's no partial ticks that happen at the end of Consecration. It's just either you hit 10% haste, you get +1, or you have 9% and nothing happens. Obviously, though, overall haste reduces the cooldown, but there's no stacking of consecrations or anything like that. It just allows you to move with it, because once you cast a new Consecrate, it moves and refreshes your previous Consecrate, right? It just takes it away. We'll head up here so we can slap the target dummies for a little bit. Additional big changes. You see it down here. All paladins are back to holy power, not just retribution. And this is where a lot of the changes come into play for holy. Now, I'm going to sort of rattle off a bunch of stuff here, as I normally do. I mean, who are you kidding? If you're watching this video, you know what's going on. But a lot of things. So your builders for holy power are going to be Holy Shock, as you would imagine. Crusader Strike. Boink. Boink. Holy Shock, either offensively or defensively. And you also build holy power by directly healing your target that has a Beacon of Light or Beacon of Faith, or any target that has Beacon of Virtue on them. Equals 1 holy power if you heal them with Flash or Holy Light, not Holy Shock. Holy Shock already gives you 1 regardless of where you cast it. It does not give you an additional 1 if you cast it on your target that is your current beaconed target. You only get the 1. And that's how you build your holy power. There could be more of these things that come into play here. Additionally, because of this change, Beacon of Light and Faith do not have the mana return function when you heal either of those beacon targets, because you get holy power. And the holy power spenders, all 3 of them that you have, are all free. They cost holy power only and a global. That's it. So your spenders then are Word of Glory, which of course is across the board. All paladins have Word of Glory. The weird thing about Word of Glory is it's not hooked up. And if you watch the dungeon footage, or if you listen to the dungeon with commentary, I talk about it quite a bit in that one because it feels fine. I ran this build in the dungeon, trying things out, trying Holy Avenger with Sanctified Wrath, the new Holy Avenger, more on that soon, with Beacon of Virtue and Holy Prism offensively, which ricochets off your extra healing, which then of course feeds into Beacon of Virtue, and then of course Light's Hammer for extra AoE healing, because we're in a 5-man and we were all melee, so we're just like, tunnel in there, Mongo. But Word of Glory does not currently work with Lightbringer. Your mastery has not changed, but when this does work, Word of Glory is right now essentially the exact same heal as a Holy Light, which is obviously not ideal. So when it does work with Lightbringer, your Word of Glory will be your strongest single target heal, which is also free. I have to spend mana to build up those holy power to make it free. But obviously when you spend a global to heal someone for free, your mana keeps regenerating. You're not spending any. So it's a mana movement. Like you move your mana forward, not backward when you keep healing. And then, of course, you do have Light of Dawn as your other spender, which I always... Bleh, there it is. Let me build back up my holy power real quick here. You did notice I didn't say Judgment. Judgment does not generate holy power. Still has the damage when you hit someone, well, you hit your Crusader Strike or your Holy Shock into the Judgment debuff. That is still very much there for your Holy Paladin. Does pretty heavy damage, of course, reduced by haste. Has the increased damage in your next Crusader Strike or Holy Shock, but no holy power. Could be something that might come in like a legendary or something like that, no idea. But when your Light of Dawn still works with your mastery. I checked this. This works just fine for the distance between your targets for Lightbringer. But Word of Glory does feel a little bit weak without having your mastery hooked up to it. But when it does, the white list essentially, it'll actually be real chunky. So, additional holy power spenders, Shield of the Righteous. Now, For Retribution Paladin, not a big deal. For Holy Paladin, kind of a huge deal for many, many reasons. And keep this in mind. I might reference this as I run through my notes here. But Shield of the Righteous costs 3 holy power, instant melee range, right? It converts your holy power into damage. And when you don't have a shield, it does look a little funky. If you wanna, you can also, because again, if you keep healing your beacon target, you generate holy power, right? So you can turn all of this into damage. And it still remains on its own global, which is a little bit weird as a healer. They may change this, they may not, because Rhett's never going to use it this way. But you can have it, it's off the GCD, because Shield of the Righteous has its own global cooldown. And you can use that as a healer. And Shield of the Righteous deals holy damage, so it ignores armor. It also hits everything in front of you. It's like a short little cone area right in front of your paladin. And it obviously gives you the armor bonus, but at the same time, who cares about the armor bonus? That's kind of okay. That might be a thing in PvP when you're getting hit on by melee characters. But the big thing here is the damage. It's AoE damage. And we went over earlier that Consecrate does pretty hefty damage as well in AoE form. And Shield of the Righteous turns your holy power into melee damage, single target, and AoE. And then, of course, you have Light's Hammer, a little bit of AoE damage. Holy Prism can do AoE damage. When you cast it on someone directly, it'll ricochet off that extra damage. Because the argument comes up, or the talking point comes up about, Resto Druids and Kitty Form weaving, or potential, Moonkin weaving now, because it's gotten stronger, or a Mythic Plus, and they do so much damage, and Discipline Priests do so much damage. And then Monks are getting some damage. Mistweaver is definitely getting more damage to healing, because they have their Eminence healing kind of coming back. We already went over Monks, so you can go check that video out if you want. So it's always this tentative point and this tipping point of what healers do the most damage, because those are get brought to the higher end content, because damage contributions in high keys and damage contribution in mythic raids, for example, is all really important from every person. Now, sidebar, Holy Paladins already do a lot of damage. They can go in there with Avenging Crusader or Sanctified Wrath right now, and they can pop off their cooldowns, and they can pop off their Holy Avenger currently, and just throw Holy Shocks over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, basically, and just get in there. They already can do that. They're already a very bursty healer. But now you get to put this in perspective with how holy power to free damage, and again off the GCD damage, but AoE damage, because Druids can, Moonfire and Sunfire spam, right? Or if they actually do Moonkin Weave because it's pretty strong, they can, of course, Starfire spam. Or they can go Feral Druid, and they can spread a whole bunch of dots. Or Monks are obviously going to be kicking and punching and spinning crane kick and stuff. So the Holy Paladin's been good at single target damage, not necessarily AoEing trash packs in dungeons, or contributing to AoE damage. I mean, you could take a Light's Hammer with 1 minute cooldown that ticks for kind of meh. The combination of things, though, really gives a bit of an oomph to the AoE potential of you as a Holy Paladin, if you choose to be that way, or you play that aggressively. That's up to you, of course. But spell power notes, I went over this for certain healers because I felt like it was definitely a thing that has to be brought up. Holy Paladin, because of how their healing works and where their healing has come from, has definitely changed over the years due to how much healing has been put into, for example, Holy Shock. Holy Shock is still going to be good. Still has the additional critical effect chance, so once you get enough crit, once you're, of course, in your Avenging Wrath window, which is still, of course, the stronger version, it's a little bit weaker for Prot and Ret, but Holy still has the 30% damage and healing and critical strike chance. So once you get to 40% crit baseline through Trinket procs or wherever else, and you pop Wings, and your Holy Shock will always crit, which will always give you Infusion of Light, which is also changed, which brings me to the spell coefficients real quick here, before I go through Infusion of Light. You currently still have the 40% aura on all of your heals in Shadowlands. Same thing as in BFA. But here, Flash of Light, this has been reduced to 120% of your spell power, down from 134%. So lost 14% spell power. Holy Light, however, which is your awesome animation, which they obviously want you to use, and you have been before, and there were some paladins today in chat saying I miss actually ever using Holy Light. Holy Light now is 160% of your spell power, up from 150, so a 10% buff. Holy Shock is still 77% damage when you use it offensively, but it's 100% spell power when you use it as a heal, which is less than both Flash of Light and Holy Light. Right now on BFA, it's 150%. Granted, it has a higher chance to crit, and you can crit cap it with, like I just said before. And of course, it interacts with, and you see in the talent, the view, Glimmer of Light is a baseline talent. More on that soon. But then Word of Glory is 225% spell power. All, of course, before mastery. So in the hierarchy of heals, Word of Glory, which is a spender of holy power, is your biggest. Then Holy Light. Then Flash of Light. And then Holy Shock. Holy Shock will contribute to your healing, and I, blasted a bunch of Holy Shocks off today in the dungeon for sure, but it is more that it interacts with, and you want to get crits for Infusion of Light, which is now, crit Holy Shocks reduce the cast time of Flash, and of course you still get the guaranteed crit after you go into Wings, so you get faster Flash of Lights, 30% faster, or you get 30% stronger Holy Lights. Big Holy Lights. Now this does a pretty big change, because on live right now you currently have, where's my notes, you have the BFA version is 40% more healing on Flash of Lights and minus 1.5 second cast time on Holy Lights. This changes you get your really fast, expensive but somewhat fine Flash heal even faster, or you get really chunky Holy Lights, and you still probably will be gearing towards haste, I imagine. So the cast time of Holy Light obviously is quite long, 2.2 seconds, but you'll easily get that, I imagine. By defaulting, I only have 14 or 16% haste right now. Once you get enough haste to make that feel a little better, roughly a 2-second cast time Holy Light, if it's worth and it chunks healing, then you'll totally cast the spell, right? That's basically what I've understood from testing today. And there are other talents, of course, that will change your idea of where you spec and where you put your heals, which is the whole point. And additionally, you have to, of course, remember that you get more holy power during the execute window or during Wings. So you get Word of Glory, which are instant. So you have more instant heals coming in the toolkit. But now let's get over to the talents, of course, and this changes a lot of how this all fits into place, right? So you can see right now, if you look at your talent calculator, if you bring up a Wowhead, things have changed. Things have moved around a little bit. Your whole aura row is gone. No more aura of sacrifice shenanigans. No more aura of mercy. You can't be a walking healing tide totem. That's all gone, because you have, of course, Devo is baseline now. So you have other options that have come into play here. Crusader's Might, and this is the side note to bring up, Glimmer of Light. Glimmer functions the exact same way it does right now. It has a spell power amount behind the scenes, however. Let me go double check how much it was again. It's 16% if you do damage, if you have damaging Glimmers of Light out, right? And it's 20% for healing Glimmers of Light. Still 8 target capped. However, Divine Purpose no longer works on Holy Shock. And Crusader's Might still totally works, but Crusader's Might with Crusader Strike has a mana cost associated with it now too. So it will cost you more mana to aggressively spread Glimmers. It is, by default, functionally, that Blizzard wants you to have the playstyle potentially for Glimmer of Light, but it is nerfed. There's no way around it. It is a nerfed interaction. Additionally, because Holy Avenger now is that holy power generation is tripled for 20 seconds, which you knew this was coming if you watched the previous Paladin videos. And that's fine, because Glimmer as a potential tool, and we don't know if Holy Shock might get a legendary effect that still makes it really good to use Glimmer. And it might be still a thing that we don't know how conduits and soul binds, all the other borrowed power we're going to get, the new systems, the new power, style of growing in every expansion is going to impact this. But at the core of it, it exists. It might not be the only option, which some Holy Paladins right now might be going like, oh, thank heavens. Because right now you're used to it. You can have Beacon of Faith or Beacon of Virtue on live with Glimmer of Light. But that playstyle is now gone because you obviously can't have them anymore. So certain things are shifting for your priorities and how you will heal. Because you had the Aura removed, Holy Avenger updated, Divine Purpose now is Holy Power abilities have a 15% chance to make your next Holy Power ability free and deal 20% increased damage or healing. And again, you have 3 spenders of those. So you can convert Divine Purpose, Shield of the Righteous, get a proc, and pop off a big Word of Glory. Right? That can totally be a thing. Or you can convert healing to damage. You heal people. You don't need to use another Light of Dawn or something like that. Or do you get, you know, a Light of Dawn into a Light of Dawn. But you can also do Light of Dawn into Shield of the Righteous or whatever combination they're in for that. Holy Avenger, of course, is just ridiculous because of things like this, for example. So you can have Holy Avenger, and you're wondering now, well, if you don't have Glimmer, so how do you AoE heal? And there's obviously, like I said, Divine Purpose potentially, and just building and spending on your Light of Dawns. But if you remember, you heal the target that is your beacon, you can just sort of stand still, Flash of Light, Light of Dawn, and Flash of Light, and Light of Dawn, and Holy Shock, and Light of Dawn, and Flash of Light, and Light of Dawn, and again, right? You can do, and that's free, right? The Flash of Light isn't free, but the Light of Dawn is free. I snuck in an extra Holy Power on that Holy Shock there, so I ended with 2, so I could just go like, you know, whack, and then whoa. That's a big one. That is definitely a big one. And because Light of Dawn also got buffed by 5%. Oh no, I didn't bring that up. At 5% stronger. It's 55% in BFA. It's 60% going into Shadowlands. And again, there's no cooldown, requires Holy Power. So building to 5, Light of Dawn, Holy Shock for 1, go to 3 again, Light of Dawn again. You're only going back to that style, which again, you got to make sure you position properly. And also, I had Holy Prism and Light's Hammer targeted here for additional ways to provide AoE healing. And there's a little bit more we can go over here as well. Bestow Faith is still the same, which means you could Bestow Faith and then cast Beacon of Virtue. And then when Beacon of Virtue is up, then Bestow Faith goes off. And that healing goes into Beacon of Virtue. And then you can Holy Shock one of your targets. That all goes into your Beacon of Virtue. All that stuff is still there as well. That is still right there. But additional things you can do is Saved by the Light. This is a new talent that is returned, essentially. And it does not work right now with anything except Beacon of Light. And as you see there, this is the Warlords of Draenor talent, except the Absorb now is based on your spell power, not based on missing HP or HP values. It's also kind of like the Light saves from your Legion artifact, where any ally with your Beacon of Light is damaged below 30% health, it will be absorbed. It's 220% of your spell power, but it's also factors in your versatility, so it's not exactly just that, because it's an absorb, so your versatility comes into play. But I would assume it's supposed to be hooked up to work with Beacon of Faith or Beacon of Virtue as well, which with Beacon of Virtue, it has a 1 minute internal cooldown. So you can't do crazy things where you put out Beacon of Virtue, everyone's low health, and they all get they all get an absorb shield. But it should at least work because Beacon of Virtue literally replaces your beacons and Beacon of Faith adds 1. Well, no way to have only 1 beacon is to just have the main tank one. But it works with only beacon. If I just sit here, I can't blast myself. Where is a guard? There we go. It works if you proc your own... Hello? If you proc your own shield here by, say, Light of the Martyring, then you, of course, you will proc the shield here in just a moment, which then, of course, will absorb following up Light of the Martyr. Doesn't hurt me that much. And one more. There it is. There's the 1 minute cooldown shield. There's the big absorb shield right there as well. And then, of course, if you keep trying to damage yourself, it'll be absorbed. But pretty interesting idea here if it works with your beacon and your Beacon of Faith, your Light and your Faith, or your Virtue. But again, currently not hooked up. Judgment of Light is still here the same way. Again, Holy Prism hasn't changed. Hammer, Bestow Faith, Crusader's Might. These are all the same still. Divine, this whole row here is shared across all Paladins. Seraphim is also here. this only gives you raw secondary stats, but it's always going to give you the same, you know, relative amount of secondary stats. And you can just continuously rotate Seraphim. So you have this sort of interim either DPS moment where you have all these extra secondary stats, or of course it buffs your mastery. So you saw my secondary stats go up there right now. So this will help you gain that huge amount of crit you might need to make your holy shocks always crit, right? And also it makes you look cool. But it'll always give you roughly the same amount of secondary stats at level 60. It's still going to be flat. It's like 400 almost of each. So it might still be like 9% verse and 10% mastery or whatever else, right? It's not going to change that value, but it does make it feel a little bit stagnant, but it's also very consistent every 15 second window every 45 seconds compared to Holy Avenger being a 3-minute cooldown, Divine Purpose being a little bit random and a little bit weaker in not, it has less chance to proc at 15%. But you do have 3 different abilities you can spend on it that you can use on the next one. And then you have, of course, the increased damage or healing. So there's something there. What's also there, you know what, Sank Wrath is just the Holy Shock reduction in cooldown, the 5 more seconds on Avenging Wrath, Avenging Satyr, big. Awakening now is also Word of Glory and Light of Dawn, which also is Divine Purpose. It doesn't work on SOTR with Awakening. I don't know why it doesn't. It could be neat if it did. But now, if you Divine Purpose Awakening, you could blast around and get a whole bunch of Awakening procs as well, which Awakening may, again, not hooked up, it may proc if you have your Ret Aura on, and you have the additional duration when someone dies. But this is also the weird thing about, well, what if I Aura Mastery and then throw off a whole bunch of heals? And what if I proc Awakening? Will that add, you know, another 5 seconds to it? It's like, maybe. Could be like a PvP thing, but at the same time, like, But you could pop Wings with Aura Mastery. And again, doesn't work. Have 30 seconds of Wings, be going to town with a Divine Purpose Awakening build, and then proc another 10 seconds of Wings, which would just add time to your current Wings window, which again, may not be totally necessary for healing, but at least you can just turn that healing into damage, because if you're not doing healing, you don't need to heal, you should be doing damage. And that is both a little bit RNG-ish, and healers don't really like to, you know, react to a bunch of RNG, but it is there. It is an option, and it could be a way you could play. But that's about it. Oh my goodness. I said, as also a note here, I said, depending on mana, take Beacon of Faith, where you put Beacon on yourself and Beacon on, say, your main tank in a 5-man dungeon. And then what if you use Light of the Martyr on DPS to heal them? Because it's cheaper. But then whenever you use any other heal, like if you self-target, right? Or if you Holy Shock, or if you heal the main tank, or heal yourself to obviously heal off the damage you're dealing to yourself when you're hitting Martyr, you're getting Holy Power to also heal again. And there we go. I just procced Awakening right there. So, which again, every time Awakening procs, you get the guaranteed crit Holy Shock, which gives you the big Holy Light or the very fast Flash of Light. So if you like reacting to procs and have that moment-to-moment gameplay, always kind of, you know, what's next, what's happening next or something, and you don't like Glimmer, then there's stuff in here to play around with. I think the Paladin overall has seen some really interesting, fun iterations, some changes that really could give you other play styles, or in this case for Holy, more damage, more AoE damage to compete in that scene where other healers might be overshadowing you. There is a link down below, of course, to the VODs, the testing VOD. I will link the Warcraft logs from the dungeon VOD as well, because you can sort of see, you can go boss to boss and see how much damage I was contributing right when the boss is pulled. It's only normal dungeons, but it's all, you know, relative. You can scale it up to heroic or mythic or whatever, if you're interested in that. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, watching, hanging out. If you'd like to support the stream and what I do here to keep me doing what I'm doing here, merch link is down below. I work with a lot of awesome artists. This is by Fabelina, for example. This is the little wolf and his little pupper Greymane. And of course, if you want to check out other designs we have down below, there's a ton. You can put them on different types of shirts, different types of fabric cuts, different types of fabric, hoodies, tank tops, you name it. colors. There's text or textless versions for like the Azurite Day shirt down there as well. Showed off earlier. This is the one we made that's kind of inspired by the Guerrillas Demon Days kind of idea. And of course that all goes to keep me doing this and keep me making merch designs, which we have more coming out. We're kind of behind right now because of everything going on in the world, but we'll make some more here soon. And of course we'll probably have something themed for the next expansion in Fabelina's design when she has some time. Oh boy, my name's been Bay. That's the Paladin. Some good stuff so far. I've enjoyed testing the Paladin. Unlike the Warlock, which was like, hopefully they fix that. But thank you very much for listening and watching and hanging out. I will see you all in the Warriors videos coming up next. Which are basically just Paladins that don't have the light, right? They're just holy warriors without the holy. Get it?